Let's get to your space then, insurance. President Trump just a couple of days ago saying, look, fine, no worries, I'll backstop insurance. And if necessary, if needed, U.S. naval ships that will escort. On the insurance part, how do you read that? This is coming from the International Development Corporation Bank, right?
Yeah, so I mean, look, the insurance market in general has a role to play historically and a responsibility to ensure trade is enabled, and so does Marsh. So the conventional insurance market, and you mentioned cancellation earlier, just to be clear, the cancellation is a pre-agreed contractual mechanism whereby they're saying, right, we're cancelling, we're giving notice so that we can reassess the risk. Now, usually that just means the prices go up. It doesn't mean the insurance is totally gone. When it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, obviously the pricing and the appetite may be somewhat reduced. And we've seen, as you said, I mean, average transits before the weekend were 130 ships a day, and it's down to now, single digits. Yeah. So insurance is not just the go or no-go indicator for whether an owner is going to take their ship through the Strait. Yeah. And insurance is available at a price. So in parallel, we are in discussions with the DFC. We have some expertise in this area. We put together something similar for the Ukrainian government after the Russian invasion, a sort of government finance insurance hybrid to allow export of grain and other critical items at a relatively low cost.
How do folks like yourselves, like Marsh, right, read President Trump's assurance that if needed, the U.S. Navy is going to escort these ships through safely? I mean, that's easier said than done.
It is, particularly for the number of ships and the diverse ownership and cargoes, and ultimately possibly a lack of U.S. national interests in the mix there. But I mean, the DFC, U.S. government insurance proposal, I think, could only work with a combination of some kind of U.S. military support. So yeah, early days in that conversation, but it's an ongoing dialogue.
Fair enough, Sherry.
Yeah, and Michael, I just wonder, put that into context for us. Insurance is available at a price. What kind of added premium are we talking about here in this particular case of the Strait of Hormuz?
So before the weekend, we were looking at something around 0.2% on the value of the ship. That then quickly sort of escalated to 1%. Initially, that was just for vessels that were in and essentially stuck in the Persian Gulf. I've already seen quite a lot of fluctuation up and down on that number. And the cost for a transit through the Strait of Hormuz is very much still on a case-by-case basis, mainly dictated by the nationality or the risk factor of the particular ship and its cargo. But it's certainly higher than 1%.
And, taking out the nationality part out of the equation, how would you assess and quantify the risks now compared to, say, Sunday?
I mean, we've seen vessels that have been hit all the way as far as Iraq and Kuwait. A tanker was hit just the other day. And we've seen vessels, a container ship that was trying to make the transit through the Strait on Wednesday, I believe, was also hit. So whilst the frequency may not be as high, certainly as the land-based attacks we've seen all over the Gulf, they're regular and real enough for most ship owners on the west side of the Strait to wait and see.
What is the assessment of what's actually going on right now? Because we had a guest on from Contango Research earlier this week. His name is Edward Finley Richardson. He was talking about how there are some trailblazers out there, and they don't want other competitors to know what they're doing, but some of the shippers with brave hearts, I guess, they're doing some innovative cover using nighttime really to keep going, to keep shipping. Is that something you're seeing? Is that something that you're recommending?
I certainly couldn't recommend it. I mean, that is a security issue, and I think it's worth highlighting that there are about 20,000 seafarers on the various ships in the Persian Gulf, and the sort of the role of the seafarer and the safety of the seafarer is something that needs to be really thought about, as well as the asset and the cargo. Again, whether you turn your AIS on or off, and whether you go at night or day, I think that that's very much depending on who you are and whether you think that you need to be clandestine and fast or not. it's very much depending on what you think the Iranians are going to think of you as you make the journey.
And when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, right, we've sort of gone through certain episodes over the past few years with the Houthi attacks at the Red Sea and so on. I wonder if there are any lessons drawn from that and being applied to your analysis of what's going on there, doing your job. Would you have known in advance and advise to make adjustments to your clients? What were the signs that you were paying attention to in the lead up to this strike?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was definitely certain signs for a few weeks. Certain ship owners were definitely making other arrangements. I guess what I'd say on a wider piece is that this is not the first time this has happened, to your point. And the world, I think, particularly the energy sector, but everybody is a bit more on board with the idea of supply chain, both in terms of disruption, but also the need for resilience. At the moment, because we are in the first week, most people, I think, are approaching a wait-and-see attitude. As you can see, even though the oil price has gone up, it's not spiked so amazingly as maybe it would have done during the Iran-Iraq war, for example. So at the moment, everyone is hopeful that maybe things will get better. And if there are Indian and Chinese cargoes going through, that may, give someone a bit of comfort that things will get better, not worse.
Michael, we like to say on the show that money always sort of finds a way, as does trade around sanctions. And in the case of oil, equally so, right? Simply because it's just so crucial to everybody's economy. The point you were talking to Sherry about, surreptitiously, there are ships going through the Strait, right? At night, with AIS spoofing, etc. My question to you is, I mean, these guys are obviously desperate, very well paid, and willing to take the risk. But are these ships insured?
I would think so. I would like to think so. Yes. I mean, again, the cover is available at a price. Now, the day rates for certain ships, particularly tankers, have gone through the roof in the last couple of days. So there is from a pure economic point of view, taking aside the people and the assets and the risk, there's probably a point at which they say, right, this is worth doing, purely from a profit and loss position.
So I need to ask you, right, ships and ship owners, if they're going to be, using these tactics to get through, right, including spoofing AIS, right, does that put them actually more at risk if they are discovered or caught by Iranians?
Well, I don't know whether it's them necessarily doing the spoofing, or the spoofing generally has come from the overlap of all the governments trying to disrupt drones. But I mean, if they just turn their AIS off, I don't know, again, whether that makes them more of a target or less. I think it very much depends on...
They could also claim they are someone they're not, though, right?
Yes, they could.
Yeah. Okay, goodness. Sherry?
Yeah, and I wonder, Michael, we talk a lot about technology advancements, and I wonder how that's really helping out here. Autonomous navigation, real-time, satellite monitoring. Has that made things easier for insurance in this particular space? And does that somehow explain some of the muted price action that we've seen in energy space?
I think certainly the data and the ability to track vessels and assets generally is useful for insurers, because one of the primary concerns they have is not just the individual vessels they insure, but the aggregation, because there are 3,000 ships on or off in the Persian Gulf at the moment. Many of them obviously have taken shelter in specific places, so there's a lot of asset value in relatively concentrated areas. So from an insurance point of view, that's extremely important for insurers to be able to manage their overall exposure. The other point I'd make about technology is that, not just necessarily for shipping, but it has become far more useful when we're looking at the wider supply chain. And we've spent a lot of time using and developing tools with AI to allow our clients to monitor their supply chains, not just their sort of first-tier suppliers, but then the second and third and fourth, so they can see the potential exposures and problems that their business might face when something like this happens. So, yeah, technology does have a role to play.